Welcome, Truth Seekers. Great to have you with us for another deep dive, and this one comes to you on behalf of the Great Awakening Report. Today, we're tackling your most pressing questions. These are the ones submitted by this amazing community, the questions that really push back against the common stories and make us think deeper, use our discernment. Our mission, as always, is clarity. It's about understanding, connecting the dots, using the sources you've shared with us. We're diving into 5 key areas today: geopolitics, global events, personal awakening stuff, really trying to get some perspective, maybe some solutions for these, transformative times. Let's jump right in. Okay, first question up. We're seeing extreme weather, right? Like the major flooding down in Texas. There's huge Canadian wildfires. Is this just climate change, the usual explanation, or could there be something else happening? It's a big one people are asking.
It is. And, the sources you pointed us towards, like Geoengineering Watch, Into the American Dream, they strongly suggest the evidence goes beyond just, let's say, natural climate variability. They're proposing that many recent events, floods, wildfires, even some really unusual snowstorms might actually be influenced, maybe even, engineered through weather modification programs.
Engineered. That's a significant claim. What kind of methods are these sources talking about? How would that even work?
Well, they get into specifics, things like aerosol spraying, which they describe as dispersing tiny particles, sometimes alleged metals or sulfates, way up in the atmosphere. Then there's cloud seeding, using substances, often silver iodide, to try and make it rain or sometimes stop it from raining. And they even mention microwave manipulation, though the details on that one are a bit less clear in these particular sources. But the core idea presented is that these aren't purely natural disasters.
Okay, so if these sources suggest it's potentially engineered,
Mhm.
what's the alleged purpose? What's the why behind it, according to them?
Looking at the bigger picture they paint, it points towards potential covert agendas. Things like gaining climate control. Imagine the power that would yield. Or maybe even causing population displacement, forcing people out of areas. And psychological warfare is mentioned too. The argument is that these actions, if real, destabilize ecosystems, sure, but they also erode public trust because the origins are kept hidden.
Right.
And it raises that critical question these sources pose. Why isn't this angle discussed more widely in mainstream channels? It sort of fuels communities like ours to dig deeper, demand more transparency.
Definitely reframes how you might look at extreme weather events.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. Second question. This one links economics and global power. What does the rise of BRICS Plus mean for the U.S.? And is there a connection to Trump's recent trade actions?
Oh, there's a very strong connection suggested here. Absolutely. When you look at Trump imposing those, 35% tariffs on Canadian goods and his whole reciprocal tariff idea, it's clearly a protectionist kind of nationalist economic stance.
Yeah.
And this is happening exactly as the BRICS Plus group, which now includes countries like Iran, Egypt, expanding its reach, is actively working to reshape global power.
So it's not just minor trade disagreements, then. It sounds like a clash of fundamental economic worldviews.
Precisely. BRICS Plus is pushing hard for de-dollarization. That means moving away from relying on the U.S. dollar for global trade and bank reserves. They're emphasizing national sovereignty, a multipolar world.
Multipolar, meaning multiple centers of power, not just one dominant one.
Exactly. And that directly challenges the U.S.-led dominance we've seen for decades.
Oh.
So when you look ahead, that upcoming 2025 BRICS summit in Russia, well, some see it as a potential landmark moment, possibly signaling the end of that unipolar era. From that perspective, Trump's trade moves could easily be seen as a defensive reaction to this major global shift. It suggests the U.S. is at a crossroads: adapt or risk becoming more isolated.
That's a huge geopolitical shift to watch. Okay, question 3. This one hits closer to home for a lot of folks. Food insecurity seems to be rising, lots of stores closing across the U.S. Is this just the economic crunch we hear about, or could it be, as some sources suggest, more orchestrated?
That's a really important question. And while, yes, inflation is real, supply chain issues are definitely real, the sources you shared, like the Economic Collapse blog, they point to something potentially deeper, a pattern. They highlight some stark numbers: over 44 million Americans facing food insecurity, and over 3,200 store closures recently.
Right.
That's actively creating these food deserts in many areas.
Food deserts, right, where people just can't easily get affordable, healthy food, especially in, less affluent areas.
Exactly. So 3,200 closures, that's a huge number. And the deeper pattern these sources suggest involves looking at economic manipulation, the way food systems are becoming more centralized, and how big corporations might be pulling out of certain low-income communities.
So what does that pattern add up to?
Some sources frame it as manufactured scarcity, not accidental, but potentially deliberate. They raise the question, could this be part of a bigger strategy to maybe weaken local self-sufficiency, make people more dependent, and perhaps funnel them towards digital ID systems tied to food access? Centralized control, basically, often presented under the banner of sustainability.
Hmm.
So the focus from these sources shifts towards solutions like community resilience, sourcing food locally, decentralizing things again, reclaiming that autonomy.
That really underscores the importance of local action and community. Okay, let's move to the fourth question. This one's definitely stirred up a lot of debate. Why do we hear so much from alternative voices about turbo cancers and vaccine injuries while mainstream science largely insists there's no connection?
Yes, this is a major point of divergence and concern, especially for groups like Children's Health Defense or the Brownstone Institute. They are actively discussing these phenomena they call turbo cancers. They describe them as unusually aggressive, fast-moving cancers appearing after vaccination. And their core argument is that these cases are not only happening, but are being underreported, maybe even deliberately dismissed by official health bodies.
So, why the stark difference in narratives? What are these alternative groups pointing to as evidence or reason for concern?
Well, while the official line denies a causal link, these watchdog groups often point to what they see as critical issues: claims of suppressed data, testimony from whistleblowers within the system, and importantly, gaps in long-term safety surveillance for these new technologies.
Right.
It raises fundamental questions about transparency and the thoroughness of investigations. But beyond the specific data points, there's a deeper, almost philosophical divide here, wouldn't you say? On one side, you have these large, centralized health systems that often ask for, well, a significant level of trust in their statements and data. On the other side, you have communities, like many listening, demanding full accountability, genuine informed consent, and complete transparency about potential risks and outcomes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So regardless of where the final scientific consensus lands, the call from these groups for independent investigation, for the right to question, and for absolute transparency in medicine, that remains a really valid and important pursuit for anyone seeking conscious health choices.
That philosophical split really does seem central to understanding a lot of these contested topics. Okay, our fifth and final question for this section takes us, well, off planet in a way. What's the connection between solar activity, earthquakes, and global unrest? Are cosmic forces actually influencing human behavior, maybe even geopolitics? Sounds pretty out there, but fascinating.
It does sound out there initially, but according to some of the sources provided, this might be a deeply important, though often overlooked, truth of our times. Zero Hedge, for instance, discussed something called the solar war syndrome. They referenced historical studies going back to researchers like Alexander Chizevsky, who apparently found consistent correlations between solar maxima periods of high sunspot activity and major social upheavals on Earth.
Like what kind of upheavals?
We're talking documented historical links to surges in revolutions, mass migrations, even outbreaks of war, coinciding with these peaks in solar activity.
Wow. So the sun's activity could literally stir things up down here. That's quite a connection.
It is. And what makes it particularly relevant now is that we're apparently heading into a solar minimum, expected around mid-2025.
Okay, and what's associated with the solar minimum?
Historically, and according to these theories, solar minimum phases are often linked more with internal stress, societal fragmentation or breakdown, and potentially even increased tectonic instability, earthquakes, and volcanoes.
And we are seeing earthquake upticks, right? You mentioned Mount Rainier, Japan.
Exactly. Reports of over 400 quakes near Mount Rainier, more than 1,300 in Japan recently. These are cited as potential physical manifestations. So connecting these dots, the perspective offered is that both the Earth and the Sun are, in a way, communicating, sending signals. It encourages us to think about living in harmony with these larger cosmic rhythms, rather than just ignoring them or assuming we're separate. It's about acknowledging we're part of this vast, interconnected, maybe even conscious universe. So now let's do that thing where we step back. Step back from the individual questions, the day-to-day news noise, and try to see the connections. When we look at all five of these areas together, a bigger pattern starts to emerge, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it.
It's a pattern that, according to these sources, goes beyond just politics or economics. It touches on ideas of engineered reality, maybe even a kind of spiritual conflict, and definitely a massive awakening of human consciousness. So here's the big picture, as pieced together from these perspectives. First, the control grid is being exposed. Think about it. Manipulated weather narratives, centralized food systems, the debate around vaccine injuries, and suppressed information. What these sources suggest is we're seeing the scaffolding of a global control structure becoming visible. This structure, they argue, operates behind the curtain, using surveillance, using suppression, often offering synthetic solutions to problems it might have helped create. These aren't random crises, they're seen as symptoms. Symptoms of an agenda to create dependence, chip away at sovereignty, and fundamentally change our relationship with nature, health, and truth. It's a challenge to our collective conscious awareness.
Okay, that's a heavy first point. What's the second?
Second, we're shifting from a unipolar to a multipolar world. The decline or perceived decline of U.S. dominance, the simultaneous rise of BRICS plus Co. It's more than just lines shifting on a map. It's presented as a major geopolitical pivot point.
Yeah.
But deeper than that, these sources frame it as almost a spiritual split, a split between centralized, top-down, technocratic control on one side and decentralized, sovereign nations or alliances on the other. It's seen as globalism versus self-determination, digital control versus human freedom, a real battle for the future of conscious existence.
A spiritual split. Interesting framing. What's third?
Third, Earth and the cosmos are communicating. Those solar cycles we talked about, the earthquake spikes, the corresponding waves of social unrest. These aren't just random data points in this view. They're seen as signals, powerful signals of a collective energetic shift happening, a shift tied directly to cosmic rhythms that impact us, impact human consciousness. As the Earth itself shows signs of imbalance, it's like a call for humanity to realign, not just politically or environmentally, but spiritually, vibrationally.
Right, aligning with those larger rhythms. Okay, fourth point.
Fourth, the human spirit is rising. This is crucial. Despite what feels like pervasive censorship or fear-based narratives, look around. Millions of people are questioning. They're seeking alternatives, reclaiming their health choices, their food independence, their spiritual connection, their freedom. So what we're witnessing isn't just breakdown, it's transformation. Yes, an old system might be crumbling, but another is emerging. A system these sources hope, rooted in truth, in sovereignty, in connection to something higher, in our own inner knowing. It's a collective, conscious evolution.
That feels hopeful. And the fifth point.
And finally, fifth, discernment is the gateway to liberation. Now more than ever, the ability to discern is presented not just as a skill, but as a sacred act. How do you tell the difference between engineered chaos and organic truth? Between propaganda and genuine revelation? Between fear programming and your own intuition?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It is. And the Great Awakening in this context isn't just about finding hidden information. It's about reclaiming your own consciousness, reactivating your sense of purpose, your divine connection, and fundamentally ending that habit of blindly following external authorities. It's about conscious choice, empowered by inner clarity.
Wow. That really does weave everything together into a powerful narrative from these sources. Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive for the week, maybe just take a moment, everyone listening, just take a breath. And maybe try to step back just mentally from the constant stream of information and the noise. Because what these sources are suggesting we're going through, it's maybe more than just political drama or social change. It's framed as the dismantling of illusion, right? And the awakening of our own inner truth. It's presented as this moment where we can choose. Choose to stop just playing a part in a script someone else wrote and instead start living consciously, deliberately, in alignment with who we really are, vibrationally speaking. And the key takeaway here seems to be this journey isn't really about fear. Fear is what they want you to feel, perhaps. It's about frequency. It's about raising your own vibration. It's not just about watching what might be collapsing out there, but focusing on what's rising up within you, within each of us. So we wanted to leave you with a few practical thoughts, maybe some tools. Let's call them foundations for ascending the matrix. Simple, actionable things for navigating this shift, building something new from the inside. First, release fear. If fear is the currency of control, as these perspectives suggest, then letting it go is how you reclaim your power, your sovereignty. It opens space for clarity, for love.
Absolutely. And second, clear your energy with forgiveness. Old hurts, old resentments, they cloud our vision, keep us stuck. Forgiveness isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about releasing yourself from its grip. It cuts those energetic cords, heals your heart, brings you back to wholeness.
That's powerful. Third,
use your breath as a portal. Conscious breathing, meditation. These aren't just relaxation techniques. They're presented as technologies of awakening. They pull you out of the mental chatter and into the now, the present moment. That's where your soul lives, where you can actually access truth, boost your conscious awareness.
And the last one.
And finally, lead with the spirit of a volunteer. Remember why you're here in this view. You came with a purpose, to serve, to awaken, maybe to help others remember too. So live with integrity, lead with your heart, Practice radical compassion. Be that lighthouse, shining clarity in confusing times.
Be the lighthouse. I like that. And consider this thought. Are you just acting out a role in the big movie playing out? Or are you stepping back, going within, and watching it consciously, making conscious choices about your participation? So maybe ask yourself today, what role are you playing? Are fear and reaction driving you, or is your intuition guiding you? Are you getting swept up in the chaos, or are you consciously choosing to anchor peace, anchor presence right where you are? It comes down to checking your inner compass, examining that mindset code. Are you just lost in your thoughts, or can you step back and witness them? Where's your vibration at your general state of being? Is it lifted above 50%, as some scales measure, or are you stuck looping in old negative programs? Can you quiet down enough to feel the guidance of your higher self right now in this moment? Are your actions intentional, creating what you want, or are they just habitual reactions? This, right now, is the time to awaken. We'll explore more in our next deep dive.